Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Alex and I am a nomadic online business manager, and I help you streamline your operations so that you can manage your business from anywhere in the world. And today we're going to be talking about 5 phases that you need to plan for in your next project plan for your next launch. Now these 5 phases are my tried and true, tested time and time again launch planning system to make sure you're showing up present for your actual launch, allowing yourself the mental clarity to know that things are happening when they're supposed to be happening, and easily executing your launches so you can get better and better at it so you can continue to do it again and again. Launches don't need to be this exhausting, massive thing, right? If we're planning ahead and we're giving ourselves enough time to complete tasks, there's really no reason for launches to be a big headache. So phase number 1 is the planning phase. This phase is when you're identifying all of the tasks that need to be completed throughout the launch. You're planning out what you want to do exactly during your launch. What is your offer? What is your bonus if you have any? What are your upsells if you have any upsells? What are all of the things that you need to do for your launch? Are you running ads for your launch? Are you hiring different team members for certain aspects for your launch? That might be like project-based versus typical in your normal day-to-day team. Right? Like this is where we're identifying everything that needs to happen essentially. And you want to make sure that you are planning ahead in terms of timelines. So you want to make sure you're giving yourself enough time to complete everything so you can complete your launch with ease. And the best way to execute that plan is to start from the end of the launch and execute backwards, right? So you want to go, when am I closing the cart? When am I opening the cart? When am I hosting my launch event? And now let's give me enough space to prepare accordingly. During this phase, it's also essential to make sure your team is up to date with everything, so you're not just giving them a ton of information that they don't necessarily know how to synthesize correctly. So what I recommend doing is having some sort of either team meeting or launch debrief video explaining the project plan, what are you launching, letting them know the big picture goal before just assigning them little tasks. This helps them hold themselves accountable in a more empowering, high-level way. So they can, from the very beginning, know the end goal. So they can also kind of help you course correct if something is potentially like assigned wrong or like mistakes happen. So having a team that's fully debriefed on the big picture, this allows them to also have that second eye. So everyone is kind of held accountable in a very empowered sort of way. The second phase is the prepare phase. Now this is probably the biggest phase in terms of manual labor, right? So this is the phase where you are building all of the assets for your launch. So you're prepared to show up in the next 2 phases in a very present, mindful way. You're not showing up flailing and chaotic and you're like, everything's last minute, I'm stressed. It does not need to be like that. So this prepare phase is when you're creating all of the assets like your sales pages, either brand new or you're updating an old one. You're creating your social graphics, you're creating your social posts, you're creating your emails, you're scheduling your emails even, right? Like you're getting all of those ducks in a row. You might be updating, your community, you might be hosting some kind of affiliate thing if you're having an affiliate team support you through this channel or through this launch. So you really want to get as much prepared ahead of time. So when you do go through the next 2 phases, you can show up with a very calm, cool, and collected energy. So you can be very present and very mindful rather than chaotic and flailing. The third phase is host launch event. Now this is if you are launching via a webinar or a challenge or any other sort of creative method for allowing people to come together as a community with the intended goal of your launch, right? So this is when you're really doing all of those tasks in terms of hosting the launch event specific things. So maybe you're swapping over things on your website, maybe you're setting up certain automations that can only be triggered during that hosting launch window, right? So all of those specific tasks that are connected to hosting your launch event, typically during that window, will be during this time. Now again, this is not to be confused with the prepare stuff. So a lot of the assets for hosting the launch event will be prepared during the prepare phase. The host launch event phase is literally only the tasks to actively host. You're not preparing assets for the launch during this host launch phase. That's during the prepare phase. So let's say, for example, you're hosting via a webinar. When you're preparing the assets, like maybe you have a slide deck and a workbook and a landing page and a replay page, all of those bits and bobs that you need to prepare to host your launch, those are all prepared during the prepare phase. So when you're showing up and hosting the launch event, you're hosting the webinar and you're explaining everything to everyone, and there might be like specific tasks you have connected to your hosting a webinar workflow. Those are all connected through the host launch event. You also might again be doing things like updating banners on your website, updating like a ManyChat automation so people get certain DMs at certain times. You can set those up earlier, but depending on the language and the words that you use, you want to be mindful of that, right? So those little bits that need to happen directly during the host launch event period are scheduled and placed during this phase. And then the fourth phase, same kind of idea, is the open cart phase. Again, you're preparing all the assets like emails, marketing materials, and sales pages and all of that during the prepare phase. The open cart period is when you're actively showing up every day and selling. You might have like a daily launch check-in where you're checking to make sure all the tech is set up and properly running. You might have a daily task to go live if you wanted to go live every day to talk about your offer, posting content in terms of like stories, all of that good stuff you want to have during this phase. Now, depending on how many things you're doing during your launch, phase 3 and phase 4 might be a bit light. Phase 2 is going to be the biggest one. Like I said earlier, it's going to have the most manual labor and the most amount of tasks connected to it, simply because that's what the purpose of that phase is. So if you're thinking this through and you're like, there actually was only like maybe a couple of things I do during the host launch event and open cart phase, that's okay. That's just how you launch, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it does help have that intention behind, like, I'm showing up during this phase to actively get people on my email list so I can sell them in my open cart period and provide them the amazing value that's in your webinar or challenge or whatever event you're doing. And honestly, the nice thing about having these two phases be very light in nature is it allows you to have the bandwidth for the inevitable whatever that comes up during launching. I find that something always breaks. You know, you might get a wave of customer service emails regarding a different offer, like something always happens, and you want to make sure you have as much bandwidth available for yourself during the host launch event and open cart launch phase, so you can have capacity for things that inevitably show up, or you can just be present and have conversations with your audience and answer their questions in detail and really get to know the people that your offer is serving. And I strongly recommend do not plan any other major project during your open cart period. There's something about having an open cart that, especially when you're getting started with launching, it opens up your energy in a really big way. So a lot of things will be coming in to your business, whether that's through like specifically your offer, but even through other avenues as well. So one thing I strongly recommend doing is not have a totally separate side project that you're planning on executing during your open cart period, because again, we want to have that bandwidth and that capacity to be available for whatever shows up during the open cart period. And then we have phase number 5, which is the wrap up phase. Now this is the phase where you're closing everything down, you're closing the cart, you're archiving lists, you're cleaning up, like your tech, like you're archiving automations, all of that kind of thing. Like anything that's specific to the launch, you're cleaning it up. So that way you're ready to go for your next launch. You don't get confused if something is used during this launch or a previous launch. You know very clearly, like, everything is done and archived and sorted appropriately. This is also when you're updating your SOPs for your launch, right? So throughout the entire launch process, I recommend documenting like what you're doing, like any updates you have to your current SOP. So that way at the end of your launch, you can easily synthesize that and update your launch SOP accordingly. And then this is also the phase where you're completing any sort of analysis or retrospective analysis on the performance of your launch. Was it worth investing in ads? Did you get the ROI that you were anticipating? Was it worth investing in your affiliate team? Did you have some strong contenders for your affiliate team, and how can you pivot for next launch? All of those kinds of things where maybe your messaging strategy, you tried a new messaging strategy for this launch. How did that perform? You'll complete all of those analysis on your launch during this last phase as well. Now, if you would like to have a templatized version with tasks already included for each of these phases, inside of your project management tool, I strongly recommend checking out my Manage Your Launch ClickUp template. It has everything you need to manage your launch with ease, a pre-made project plan for your tasks using these exact 5 phases that I mapped out during this video, as well as content calendar, a templatized content calendar, data tracking tools, and launch planning assets to get all of the details clear for your launch as well. If you would like to explore what that template looks like, you can check it out in the description down below. And if you have any questions about planning your launch specifically with these 5 phases, please feel free to leave me a comment in the description down below and I'll happily answer that for you. Let me know if you have any questions, and yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye.